had to name one core skill that you think is a superpower, what is it and why? And I have no problem with you repeating what someone else said.
Here. I would say communication, good
Yep.
communication. And I think it's just because most everything boils down to communication, having set context, having prepared people for things. So
Great.
I'd say smile. Like you wake up, you smile, you walk, into the elevator, you smile. I think that changes immediately, hopefully, the context with the other person. So I think smiling goes a long way.
I love that. What do you got, Tom?
It works. I'd say listening with empathy. Listening, really listening. Not just, nodding your head, but listening empathetically. That's the key.
I would say for me, mindfulness, which kind of encapsulates just being able to recognize the context of things going on around you. So I think listening, communication, smiling is just knowing the room. And for me, it's been a really core skill.
Love it.
For me, it's emotional intelligence. It's really showing empathy to others and being in check with yourself. And I think those are really important. And that's what I would say.
So I work with a lot of behavioral scientists and neuroscientists, positive psychologists. There is science to back up every single one that you guys talked about. And I'm married to a college professor, and it is a unique time in education right now, right? And all these skills that you're talking about they were hurt during COVID pretty badly. And so I think this next question that we talked about before the panel about remote work, how does remote work affect this core skill development that we're talking about? These qualities, because we're already seeing the problems in college, and I've seen the problems in my workplace. I imagine you guys have as well. So what comes to your mind when you think about that? Because we have certain aspects of remote that are not going to go away, right? But what can we do? What's happening out there, and what can we do about it? Any one of you?
I'll start. Hi. I would say, in my experience, I've been doing it for 50 years. The remote work for me has been difficult. The collaboration piece, the emotional intelligence piece, it's slow to develop. The communications is slow to develop. Also teamwork, because teamwork relies so much on the opportunity to trust each other. And it's difficult to do that through a screen. So in person, human relations, I always say in my business when I started public relations, they said public relations is this and that, but it isn't. It's all about human relations. So in my business, being able to touch and see and feel and be there and smell and think all at the same time are such great skill sets. It slows down the process. It doesn't make it impossible, but you need to be able to be much closer then. And it really takes trust into a commodity of some sort. It creates it because you have to know that I'm going to trust somebody on the other side of that screen because their paper will be there on time, or the work product will get there, or they'll call me if I have a problem. Trust all of a sudden takes on a different role and different shape. And it's tough for a lot of young people to adapt to that.
Anyone else want to add?
I would just add the learning, like for young professionals, there's an amount of learning that you cannot do via a screen. When you're learning career type professional work, you need to observe day-to-day situations that are happening around you. There's no internet training or even Zoom sessions that can replace what you learn from being around people and seeing things unfold in real life. So I think in person is very important.
So you're talking about trust too. I interviewed Colin Fisher, who's a scientist who studies affective groups, and he was saying the thing that he thinks people get caught up on is they think about trust in the big T way, when trust really is about, are you going to get this thing done? Yeah. Can I just trust you get this thing done? And I think that is a thing that we all know in terms of the way we grew up and work, of you pretty much found out who would get the things done now. And there are more places to hide out now. So I wonder if we can spin a little bit on this trust idea and how we think that can be effectively taught. Maybe, because I don't know that I ever had a class on it.
Yeah, I think the thing I would add is in the world of sales, what is lost, and it could be age, generational, just based on experience, you lose that human connection where you walk into someone's office, you look around, you see the picture of their family or where they went to school or places they've traveled. You make that connection, and you have to connect with people, in my opinion, to really gain the trust and to build that rapport and build that relationship. And in the world of sales, which I've been doing for quite a while, you have to build that before you start solving for their problems and asking them a bunch of questions. And I think that's lost on the screen. People don't focus as well. You know, they're multitasking, or they can easily cancel on you versus you being in their lobby or waiting for them. So that's where I see it. And it's a struggle, and people are showing they're productive. But for me, it's that human connection, that relationship.
I'd love to add to that.
Yeah.
I think that, what trust isn't is curated. It's authentic. And so much of what we experience online is curated. And I think for young people who've grown up with online, everything is curated for them. So how do you build trust when, like you say, that you've got a background on Teams, you have no idea what's happening in that person's world, where they are, what they're doing, what they might be in the middle of. And I think that it's lost because trust is vulnerability too. And when you're behind a screen, you're not being vulnerable, hardly at all.
Well, I absolutely agree with that. And what distinguishes some of that for me is to be very deliberate and very clarifying. Clarify exactly the times, the dates, the issues, and then when we finish, let's go back and make sure we all understand the roles and the timing and the deadlines. It's very important to slow that process down for a lot of folks, and it helps you develop some of that trust because they can begin to realize and understand that there are deadlines that they have to meet. And some people just let it slide. Well, I'll get it Thursday, I'll get it Monday or Friday. And we have some serious issues in the business. And when you're communicating, you have deadlines, which are 24/7. And it's very difficult to teach that yearning or a skill set. I mean, you're either born with that nowadays or you just don't have it. I find it a lot in people between the ages of 40 and 60. They still have the get up and go. I'm working with a new set of group of people. I've merged my business with another business, and we've got 20 young people involved. And they're wonderful to be with, and it's a great time to go out and enjoy life. But they're learning that how to work with humans, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, look at all the beautiful humans we have here. And let's all smile.
What you got, Carlos?
I'll add one last thing in terms of interpersonal relationships. How many of us went to kindergarten? Raise the hands. All right. You learn basic skills, like how to treat each other, how to pull someone's hair.
Yeah.
You know, you get different scents, different smells, and I think not losing the interpersonal connection on what makes us unique. You know, sometimes you wake up in the morning, it's not a good day. Your hair's all messed up, right? Sometimes you get together and you smell really good, and that shows, right? And so not losing that interpersonal connection, like almost breaking it down to when we were little, that's really the fabric of who we are. We're beings that need to be around people, and we can't lose that as we kind of get into this world that we're in today.
It's interesting because at Second City, right, we teach these people, but we're teaching them how to play and play in a very specific way. So and people are always surprised by this. They're like, you just get up there and make it up. And we're like, we do, but the prep work is intense. They have studied for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and they have call times, and they have rituals before those call times. Then they have a very specific time on stage that they're going to be on, and then afterwards they have notes. So it's like, and it's drilled right into them. And then somehow we feel like, well, the rest of the world doesn't need that. It's like, no, the rest of the world needs that too. This is really hard. So I want to talk about 2 other qualities that we've sort of touched on here, which is curiosity and empathy. I recently interviewed on my podcast Morgan Housel, who has a book called The Art of Spending Money. He's a wonderful business writer. And he credits this line with his brother-in-law, who is a social worker, who says, all behavior makes sense if you have enough information, which I was blown away by. And to me, what that is a call to is these ideas of curiosity and empathy. They've been considered very soft words in the past, but we've brought them up, I think, in like, this is kind of the hardest stuff, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would So I have a very stark personal example related to that phrase, which is we had coaching for sales managers back at a job I had a number of years ago. But I was being coached, so they observed a one-on-one that I was having with a team member. And so they just kind of sat and watched, and I did my one-on-one like I always do, and we get through it. And I was like really proud. I'm like, yeah, we covered everything. I bet most managers aren't that good at these one-on-ones, But what he said is, you like dived right in to the business stuff. I might suggest that going forward, you first just kind of say, hey, how's life outside of work? And just do kind of a pulse check on your team member as like a human before you get to the business stuff. And that has been such a game changer for me, because what I realized is like, you could, he said, God forbid you go into a meeting and you come down hard on someone because they haven't been around and you don't know what they're doing and their results aren't there, but like they're battling cancer or they just had a death in their family. Like, you just don't know. So give people the space to understand them and what's going on in the human side of things before you make judgments. And when you do, when you're curious, when you understand where people are coming from, then most everything does make sense, right? There's a reason people behave the way they do, but you have to take the time to try to understand first.
I'd add on the curiosity. I think by nature, depending on our nature of our business, like in finance, I'm paid to be nosy, right? And so, like an example, we were working on a commercial baker recently that we brought in, and so how do you make the bread? How do you source it? What are your customers? What distinguishes you? And he got to the point where he got back and said, "Do you want to be a baker?" I'm like, "No, I'm a baker." but it's like understanding each other and understanding, the business, and so it's curiosity is like at the core what we should be constantly doing. That's how you get to know each other. That's how you get to know a company, how they make money, how they don't make money, how can they be efficient. And so curiosity is huge in everything we do.
I think people are reluctant. I know this from Nick Epley's work at the University of Chicago. People are reluctant to self-disclose, that they often sort of feel like, hey, they don't want to hear this. And it's like, no, we actually totally want to hear this. And that's the only way you're actually going to understand what someone's going through. So I think it's a good point. Yeah.
I think from a leadership perspective, you can combine the two with a simple question: is what's on your mind? I've started using that, and it came out of a book, and I was reading it, and it was a very simple question, and I've been so surprised. Sometimes, so what's on your mind? They go right into work, fact-based, and then sometimes you say what's on your mind, and they're like, you're not going to believe what happened. My parents, I'm having to put my parents into assisted living, and we don't even talk business. We talk for a half hour, 45 minutes about the challenges of being a caregiver and all that. And that's where you make that connection. And that simple question is, and what else? And that's the curiosity. And then what else? And then they keep opening up and keep going there. And I think that's a great way to bridge that. And I think it's helpful in personal life and in business.
I think the key point there too is, as leaders, to your point about improv, the more that you're on your routine as a leader, then you're going to show up in a better place to ask those curious questions. And so when you're saying like in the improv, probably people have routines that are superstitious or even whatever, but they know that if they do those things, they're going to have that mental space to think of that next funny thing that they wouldn't have come up with. And I think to be curious and really see your people, you have to have the right mental space to do that. You can't be worried about all the things that you forgot to do. So I think for leaders, curiosity only comes with you showing up in the right.
And the rituals help set the stage for
Exactly.
that. So we literally, before we come on stage, Phil and I, we have a ritual at Second City that we do where I pat him on the back and said, "I got your back." And he did it right back to me. And that nudge is huge with regard to being like, there's a physical act and a verbal act, and that is meaningful to how we enter a room together, because then suddenly we're not alone. And and that is not a thing that was taught in business school necessarily, maybe a little bit now that they're realizing this. And I think we are also starting to touch on another question here, which is this idea, again, another term I don't like is work-life balance. And I had a guest on the podcast who talked about it as work-life sway. And what I liked about that, she's like, you're never home is never not with you, and work is never not with you, especially if you love the things that you do. And I think we're all people who do. So how do you manage that in your world? How do you see that managed? You know, we have different generations that feel differently about this stuff.
You have to enjoy what you do, because if you don't, you're gonna find the job or the task that you're working on that work. When work becomes who you are, and those entrepreneurs in the room, you would know that. Those that are trying to innovate, you would know that. If you have a passion for what you're doing, then it's not work. Then you find ways to enjoy what you're doing, and selling or providing a service. And I think that's hugely important. You have to love what you do, and if you don't, find it. Like, find a way to find what you love to do.
I think what you had mentioned in some of the copy was, what was the term? Work-life sway. Work-life sway. And I really like that. I mean, I like the movement of it. I thought it was very real, very honest, because you have so many different issues coming at you today, especially with dealing with your business and the people around you and their needs. We talked about it. You just talked about it in the last question. Information is knowledge, and knowledge is power. And so what you said earlier about information is so critical. The more you know about your people, the more you can talk to them individually. You may have a meeting where your best person is sitting there, not participating and thinking about something else. And afterwards you could go off on that person, or maybe you could understand what that person is going through and then help that person get to where they need to go and move forward. That's part of work-life sway.
Yeah, conversely, what's working for someone? You seem happy and you're productive. What's going on?
I like the term work-life sway. I've heard work-life integration talked about a lot, but what I don't love about that one is it makes it seem like you can't ever be with family without working, and you can't ever be without work without family. And so I like sway, the concept that like sometimes you're more in one camp than the other. I mean, one of the things for myself that I try to apply, someone said to me once, because I was like, it's just really hard. Whenever I'm like around my kids, I keep getting distracted like by my phone because I get these emails and whatever. And they're like, would you look at your phone in a client meeting? I'm like, no, I would not look at my phone in a client meeting. And they're like, then why would you look at your phone in the like limited amount of time you have with your kids?
That
like
was a
now
sick
I don't.
burn.
It's like a pretty sick burn, right?
It is a sick burn.
Totally sick burn. But it's really helped me. So I do think just blocking time. If you're swaying over here, be all in here. But then when you're swaying over here, like be all in here. And that helps. And then for the younger generations, it is interesting. Like, I guess when I was coming up, the work-life balance became more of a topic when people had families. And it became more about, they want to be with their kids. And that was really the draw that required more flexibility and whatnot. And I fully believe there should be balance regardless of whether you have a family or not. But some of the younger generation, they want a lot of balance right away. And so I think that's fine. That's also coupled with you need to know the job that you're getting, and there's certain jobs that come with trade-offs and all of that. So I think.
Can we be a little honest about that? Because I think we should. Like, and I'm of a generation, obviously, that was terrible with regard to like working through like illness. We were just joking about it. Jim Belushi was over here yesterday, and he's like, I go, did you ever take time off? He's like, no, I had a glass of gin with an Alka-Seltzer and I go do the work. And it showed on stage, by the way. But one of the things, I have a son who is a actor in Atlanta. He's a Shakespearean actor, and he's also working at a taco joint to make money. And he's doing the thing you do if you want to be an actor, which is I have to work 70 hours a week so I can afford to live because I want to be on that stage. And this is a period in my life when I can do that. I kind of don't think there's a thing wrong when I think about people, especially in sort of art fields and some other fields where early in your career you have, before you have kids, before you have those things, you spend time there. Is that completely old-fashioned, or is that something that we do want to hold on to because these stages of life are different?
Well, I think it is that. I mean, I jokingly refer to my husband as my unpaid chief of staff because there's times I come home from work and it'll be a few hours into the evening and I'm like, I'm just stuck on this thing. And because he knows me personally and the things that make me tick, when he hears a challenge that I'm thinking about at work, he can think about it not just from his own perspective, but from mine too, and help me to see something in a different way. So, on the one hand, you might think, well, you're bringing your work problems home, but at the same time, it's more efficient for me to have that 5-minute conversation with him at home than stay up all night thinking about it.
I think totally so true. I think to your point about like different life stages, it was interesting. I was on a panel with Melody Hobson, and she said something that stuck with me because she was like, I always felt like, because she was talking about this and young professionals and what people can expect, and she's like, I always saw it as I had to work really hard to earn control of my calendar, like to earn control of my time. I had to put in the time. And I do think that's a concept that holds true today. A lot of us put in a lot of time to get where we are, and we are awarded the privilege of having a little bit more control of where we are and when we are. But there was a stage before that where you had to less control. You had to kind of be at other people's beck and call, and that's just kind of what you had to do to earn the privilege of the next place.
I don't know if you guys remember, we did a project with Lyric Opera Chicago called the Second City Guide to Opera. And it was a collaboration, and Renee Fleming and I sort of headed it up, and Renee became a friend. And I was sitting in a meeting with her, and she was going through her calendar, and I look over, and I'm like, I want to look at your calendar. And it was so full, with all this other stuff. And I'm like, what's your relationship to this? And she goes, oh, my voice is not going to be my voice soon. So I'm fine with my calendar being like this because it is not going to be kind of now. But she's doing tons of other stuff and really interesting work. But it was someone, when you just said that, I thought about like, oh, she got control of her calendar. And she knew at a certain point they were just going to release it. So I think it's another way of thinking about that. That's really interesting.
There's also unique, that's why I like the idea of sway. There's moments in your life where you just pulse into work because the opportunity's there and you have the chance to make it, whatever that is to you. And then there's other points, my daughter went off to college 3 years ago. I said to my wife, I feel bad for people at work. And she said, why? I said, because I'm going to be back very present at work. Because when my daughter was in high school, I wanted to be at her dance, her cross country, because I only have one child. So there's these pulses where you pulse in, you sway out, and then I call it life. I used to call it work-life balance. I just call it life balance. Because there are moments in time when you have an opportunity to really lock in at work and make that whatever that is for you. And I completely agree on you got to love what you do. You want to kick off the covers in the morning because if you don't, I know it's easier said than done. It's time to find something that you're really passionate about.
And make your bed.
I think that's actually hugely important.
Well, you smiled.
I started doing that, like I don't know, so like it was COVID maybe, and I read something about that, about the power of these. You're going to be home, make your bed, change your time so that you're like, because we're all stuck at home, and it was very effective for me.
In my little world, we do a lot more work now nationally and even in Europe and Southeast Asia, and so that sway that you talk about, you could find your groove. I have a gentleman that's been with me for 27 years. It took about 10 years, but he found his groove, and I have no rails on him. He's completely free, and he continues to pursue business and does such a great job, but he's free to run, and he sways in and he sways out. He's high-strung, difficult sometimes to understand, but productive as hell. I mean, I kind of designed the business around the people, and it's really kind of cool when it works. And if it doesn't work, it's, but we could talk about that later.
All right, can we talk about AI? All right, I'm going to make you talk about AI. It is going to affect all of our industries, right? Everyone on the stage?
Already has.
Already has. So where do people, where do complicated human beings show up in that world? Where I have my own opinion, but I'd love to hear from you folks what you think that looks like.
Well, in my business, I had a gentleman in the office that would tell the staff, don't use AI because you have to write your own copy. My attitude is, back in the 90s and 80s when computers would come into existence, I got 1,000 different names, and I thought I'd do everything, .com this and .com that, and it took off. In the same way here, you have to master it. You have to be part of it. It establishes patterns and predictive work product, but you have to establish the ethics, you have to establish your vision, and it gives an opening for those individuals that might not have a particular skill set in the world of human relations and public relations and communications where I'm at, but somebody who can guide it like a pilot, somebody who understands where we are as a human endeavor and what we're trying to do. You have to be able to manage it, but you have to have a different kind of person to do that. And that's the hard part. That's a much more sophisticated human being with a broader outlook on life and understanding, especially the ethical pieces that are coming at us at 1,000,000 miles a second. It's fascinating, it's exciting. I'm an old fart, but I'm really wanting to get into this thing. I really do.
I'd say we're talking about core skills, right?
Yeah.
So things like making your bed, boiling an egg, how to drill a hole in the wall, putting up pictures. And a good example, so I just moved into a new place and I had all these empty walls that I had to put stuff on, right? How do you go about it? Like, yeah, you got to measure in this ChatGPT. Based on the height of the wall, this is the size of the room. I took a picture of the room and I gave it to ChatGPT, and it said, this is how a gallery attendant would set up their walls, right? And so it gave me, I had the core skill, but it gave me the information on how to do it better. And so I think I think AI is just going to make us better at some of these core skills. We just we can't let it overcome us, but I think it should make us better.
I think curiosity is another thing. I think, bringing curiosity to understand how AI can improve your team and how it works together. That's what it's that same human notion. And I think people who are fearful of AI are worried, oh, AI is going to generate fake and do all this. It's still not the AI, it's the humans doing it. So if people are creating false information, it's still the people that are enabling it. Right. So bringing that curiosity and creating a safe space, it's just like probably back when email was invented or the internet. I mean, it's just technology. So curiosity and making a safe space for your team to learn how to use it and share what they're learning, I think will help us to live with it in a way that lets the humans be humans and the machines be machines.
Yep, I agree with that. I think right now, at least at our company, AI is taking tasks. It's not taking jobs, and I do think we are still like a long way off of agentic AI, where AI is actually replacing human jobs. I think, when you look back through history, we have had so many technological and efficiency enhancing inventions, and they have been huge game changers for us as humans, and they have not meant that humans don't have a place in society. So this will look different. We don't know exactly what it will look like, but I don't know that there's any reason to believe this won't be another one of those things. And I think, what it can help make more efficient is really incredible. And it should make most of our jobs, much more enjoyable, because it's the rote tasks that it can take over so much more easily than the thoughtful work that most of us probably value doing.
Well, it started like the printing press. Changed up, right, and automation and agriculture, all those things. So it is going to happen. I was here. I remember when the internet started. That the 16-year-old who was in the teen troupe, who was a whiz with computers, put in the internet at Second City, and I remember being like, "What is he doing? Like, what do you guys?" And we were the first theater in Chicago with a website. And everyone was sort of like, "This is not going to be a thing." And then we sit there and I was like, "Where does our money come through?" It comes to the internet. So it will happen. It will affect jobs. The jobs will change. That has happened with every one of these things. So I think that's the other thing. It's like you can't look away from that and we should plan. But we also have to like wrestle with it and play with it. And I think about, our work, because I can tell you right now, AI is not going to be doing your comedy shows. I promise you that. It's not very funny.
I can attest to that. It is not.
It's not funny. It's not funny. It can tell like a dad joke, and no one. Your dad can do that for you. But one of the things that I think about that we teach when we're taking suggestions from audiences, when we're starting scenes, is what we call prompts. and giving the correct prompt to AI, and then giving it the second prompt, build on that, the yes and quality of improvisation. All those things can help in terms of that communication to then get you extra prepared for the work you want to do. Because ultimately, the other thing AI can't do like on its own is work in teams. And every one of us works in teams. Even when we think we're working alone, we're not working alone, right? And so another thing that doesn't get taught very well, I think, in business school is that idea of teams. And I'm curious for this group, what are like the most effective things you've seen that work in your teams or in your teamwork?
Well, I would say when we're together, in the middle of the week, we get together for 48 hours and we are together, collaborative. We understand each other better. We spend more time talking to each other, face to face. Human existence is just, as I think you said it, it's just the way it gets better. Sharing the flesh with each other, being around each other, and getting early there, having coffee and lunch. Those things are, things that have come out of this whole COVID thing that I think are really, increasing and getting better for people like myself. The AI thing, unfortunately, is going to put, 20, 30, 35% of my folks in the business of communications, out of work unless they get much more sophisticated in how they're dealing with their psychology of the intelligence of how the world moves between countries and each other and issues, etc. But the bottom line is when we're together, that's the best time that we have. Difficult to understand when we're not there. A lot more phone calls, a lot more tracking, a lot more chasing. But, getting together is the best thing in life, I think. It's just the best thing in life. Just like being with all of you.
Well, I think to add on that, being curious, like I was just thinking about the opportunity to bring my team here to do something, just the laughing together. Yeah. Team building events to me are the best. No contact with work. We're not collaborating. We're not putting stickies on the wall. We're not locked in a room. I think that's just so critical to be able to sit with your team and laugh and just connect and just do silly things. Because in work, we don't do a lot of that, at least not at our work. And I think that's important. I think that's where you start building the bonds. You have to have trust, but you can't force the trust. You just can't. It just doesn't work that way. I don't think humans work that way. You can't force someone, you got to trust me, I'm your leader. They'll be like,
I think some of the best teams that I've experienced being part of or building are like very diverse teams. And I don't mean like gender and race necessarily. I just mean like diverse styles, diverse approaches, diverse personalities. And I have always hired around me trying to fill gaps that I don't have. Like there's certain things that I feel like I do fine. It's not to say someone wouldn't also do it fine, but like I like bringing people in who are really good at things I'm not good at. And then like my leadership team, we've done all sorts of, because we get a kick out of them, but we've done like personality trait assessments, right? Leadership style assessments. And they've helped us learn about one another. And we literally are evenly plotted across like the quadrant of different types of styles you can be. But it helps us understand one another. It helps us communicate with one another better. Because like the risk to a diverse team that all approaches things differently is a lot of conflict. And I think you get away from it. We're back to the curiosity and empathy thing. If you're curious and you learn about one another and you understand that you're built differently and have different preferences, then it becomes much more easy to communicate and you build that trust. And then when you do have those different approaches coming, like we will get to a much better decision because there's many different people and different types of thought bubbles happening than we would if it was just one type.
Well, I don't think an orchestra would be very interesting if everyone was the oboist.
Yeah, right.
And, and a baseball team is not going to win when it's just, a slugger. Go Cubs.
I'd say communication and integrity, like in banking and finance, we're in the business of taking risk, of putting capital out to work and getting that capital back, right? And so how do you collectively, as a team, get around a company, a customer, so that you could provide that capital? So it's communication, being honest, when there's problems or when things are going well, just communication and that open dialogue and high level of integrity, so that we can do what we do to support our customers, right? And so I think that integrity and communication are at the paramount.
And people aren't going to take risks if they don't feel like you have their back. So giving people the ability to test things out or maybe make a wrong decision, but own it as a team, that ability to have your back is what it comes down to.
That is key. Thank you. I forgot to say that because that's how we got started. Everything we did, we never done before. And the first office we had was a fake office, and I hired some friends to come over and pretend we had an office, and had a client come in from DC. We signed the client. You do what it takes. Many of you are entrepreneurs. You just have to adapt to the environment, and then you move with it. If you wait for things to change for you, you're out of business. So adapt to the environment. We have done that for 50 years, and you're absolutely correct. If you don't have their backside, you have to be willing to risk all of what you have if you're going to ask them to risk with you. And if you're a good leader, people will follow with you, and you take good care of them. You have to take care of people. You have to take care of each other. And nowadays, we have a tendency in our society to look the other way so many times. But you're all in this business. You're all innovators. My goodness, it's so exciting just to walk around you and listen to you. So keep doing that with other people, because it also will help our society encourage themselves to get better.
There's been a surprising amount of content about effective lying in tonight so far. I was actually going to talk about tolerance for failure when you brought it up. A huge thing in improvisation, because you're going to fail the bulk of the time. And I think that is not something we normalize, which is we get it wrong more than we get it right. The science on this is pretty clear. Nick Epley's work shows that it's around 20 or 30% we get it right, which jives if you sort of think about your hit rate. So one of the things, I didn't ask you about this before, you already shared a personal failure story, which I love.
There's much more.
I might ask you for another one. So I'm going to tell mine, but I think people love this because we've all done okay. And it's kind of fun for people to then realize that, oh no, we effed up. So here's one, I have many. This is one of my favorites, which was, I thought it was a brilliant idea to do a stage version of Slapshot, the hockey movie from the 1970s, in Canada, because they love hockey. And I worked really hard to get the rights. I had the woman who wrote it is borderline crazy, and I was told this, but I got her to give me the rights. I got Universal to agree for $1 to let us produce this at Second City, Toronto. We invested money. I got other investors all excited about it, and it got great reviews, and no one came. And in sort of dissecting what happened, I realized what we know in theater is that women buy the bulk of theater tickets, and I never asked the question of who would the audience be that would buy the ticket for the show, because there was not a woman in Canada who's going to buy a fucking ticket to this hockey show because they're already, their husbands are watching hockey at home or at the game. And it was just I didn't ask. I trusted my brilliant idea, and enough people were because I've been pretty successful in my career, and this is a problem with success, by the way, is people are that sounds great. You're a hit machine. Go for it. And we lost $100,000. It's all right. Made it through. I'm sitting here today. Anyone got a good failure story?
Let's see. Failure, and in banking you can't fail very often, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be around. So I think the rule of thumb is if you have $1 million loss as a bank, you probably have to book $100 million in loans to make up for that loss. So on the professional side, very little room for error in terms of failure. On the personal side, it happens all the time. So, married twice, I should visit my mom more often. All the life failures, wake up earlier, work out, constantly failing. And so, but there's a balance. The personal makes up for the professional.
I'm on marriage number 2 as well. All right.
Yeah, I'm an ultra conservative, and in the work life, I've been at the same company for 24 years. I've seen Comcast business grow from basically zero startup to where we are today. in my personal life, it's just yin and yang. I'm a mess. Like, at least at home, my wife's always like, how do you not know we're going here? What are you doing on Monday? And we have she teaches, I work. We have a lot going on. We only have one child. Seems pretty simple, but we did decide not to outnumber ourselves. But lots of failures at home. And she's always like, how are you successful at work? And I'm like, I'm buttoned up. I'm tight. I got this calendar. She's like, can't you bring a little of that home with you?
Yeah.
So I'm a mess at the home, and it's okay. I
More sway.
Try to, yeah.
More sway.
I need to sway. But work, super conservative, not a risk taker. Try to be buttoned up.
I was working for a company, security organization that was purchased by private equity, and I was a couple of ranks down from the leadership team, and the private equity company came in and basically gutted the leadership team. And our new CEO had a daughter who he said, I want you to shadow a bunch of people and, figure out what you want to do here because we're going to make a job for you. And I thought my grand plan was to make her be my best friend. And then she would tell her dad all these great things about me. But what I unintentionally did was show her how much fun my job was, and she took it.
Oh, no.
But it landed, and then from there, I got my first executive role. So it worked out for both of us.
Congratulations. Did work out well. I've had many of them, and I can't pick out the one that I like the best.
Give a second or third best. That's fine.
Right. My third best was I was working the campaign. Before I started my own business, hung up my sign. I worked for. I did a lot of political campaigns around the country. Blah blah blah. And I was working for Alan Dixon, who was a U.S. senator from Illinois in the mid '80s, and it was his re-election campaign. And I've been on the staff in Washington for a while, and he sent me home. It was really an interesting education I had because he called me into his office, and I thought I was doing a good job as the press guy. And he had this big office with Thomas Jefferson painting and everything else in the big Senate office in the Hart Building. He says, Tommy, I said, how you doing? I said, no, yes, sir, I'm doing all right. He said, how am I doing? I said, sir, you're doing great. I'm kissing ass the boss. And he says, well, I got to do you a favor, Tom. I got to send you home. And I said, why are you sending me home? I said, I got to send you home because my good friend Bob Dole, who runs the Senate Republicans, he's running 4 or 5 people against me. I might lose that campaign. You have to go home. I said, what am I going to do home? I'm going to put you on the campaign payroll, and you're going to get me the right opponent. You know how I won 60 elections? I had the right opponent. And until that moment, I never knew that you have to have the right opponent. I always thought you just run and you hope you win on issues. But anyway, he said, you got to get me the right opponent. And I said, okay. So I went home and I did a lot of press work, et cetera. And I made some friends with Reggie Potterton, who was one of the editors at Playboy magazine. And my guy, Senator Dixon, was the chairman of the anti-terrorism subcommittee for the Senate Armed Services Committee, Sam Nunn. And we had Father Genco and the Iranian hostages. All that crisis was going on in the world. We were doing commercials in Beirut and everything else. And I say to Reggie, can we do a story in Playboy National? And I talked to him about what we're doing on the anti-terrorism subject. They say yes. So we're double truck ad colors and everything. 2,000, 4,000 words. It was a wonderful piece. And I got this done in January of the election year, in '86. And it was supposed to run in the primary in March. But it didn't run. They kept moving the date over and over and over. And I ended up getting the right opponent, Judy Kaler, a wonderful lady, a good friend of mine, former judge. She decides to run and wins, beats all these men. And now we're running against a woman, and this article comes out in October in Playboy magazine about the Armed Services Committee Terrorism Task Force. And I remember when I going down to the Union League Club on Michigan Avenue with Senator Dixon in the cab, I got to show it to him before he gives a speech. And he says, this is in October. And I said, well, here's the article. Look at how good it looks. He said, oh, Tom, that's great. Oh, there are a lot of words. And then all of a sudden he gets to the middle. He says, Tommy, there are naked women in this magazine. I said, Senator, that was just an accident. I said, it was supposed to be a month ago, 2 months ago. And then she went on, called us to get out of the campaign. We fortunately won the race, but that was a big mistake on my part.
So we're going to cut close here because how do you even top that? But I'll add a little color onto it, right? So I'm married. My wife Ann is every parent's nightmare. She runs a BA in comedy writing and performance at Columbia College. So she makes your kids, study comedy in college. And she's got a book coming out next week called Funnier, which is her comedy theory book. And one of the things she talks about with regard to stand-ups and in comedy in general, but stand-ups and improvisers is ideas around perspective taking and perspective giving. So in improv, we do a lot of perspective taking. We take suggestions, right, and we spit stuff back at you. Interesting thing that stand-ups do is they have to do perspective giving. They have to teach you how to watch them. And they kind of got to get that down in the first 5 minutes. So I want you to think about your favorite stand-up and their first Netflix special. And what was their first 5 minutes? And I'm going to tell you right now, it was them making fun of themselves. It was Patton Oswalt as a schlub, Amy Schumer as a slut, John Mulaney as a drunk. I could go on with every single one of them. And what are they doing, right? Well, they know to create that connection. They're sharing a challenge that they had, but guess what? They're on the stage telling you. And that creates this moment, right, where you're like, oh, I want to hear more. So one of the things I'll close with, which you guys have been so generous with that, because you just displayed it, which is that kind of humanity that you're showing your people allows them to then take the risks, be risk tolerant, failure tolerant, all that, but also know that they want to be the one standing on the stage who ultimately succeeded. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.